On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
Over time, I think men and women have lost their way in the sense of what is it to be a man and what is it to be a woman. And I can point to secularization of society. I can point to a lot of things of why this is the case. But at the root of it, I think it's fear, right? I think it's a fear of, in my particular case, I grew up with both my parents. There was infidelity in my household. Okay, so my parents stayed together until my dad's passing of this year. But there was a fear that was ingrained in me from a very young age. If I trust this man, he might leave me for our sins. Like if we got that out of the way, right? So if we allow ourselves to just feed into our desires or just feed into our happiness, what it does is that you're feeding your flesh, and that's all you're doing. That's all you're doing is feeding that immediate fleshly need of yours. Hence, having sex, getting your nut off, whatever you want to call it, right? Discipline, on the other hand, is what is necessary for society to continue. Because if we have discipline and if we have this sense of duty, we are working towards a greater purpose. And I think that's what Anton is trying to say, is that we have to have a level of discipline. Not all the time do I want to cook dinner for my husband, but when I cook it, I know I'm fulfilling my duty, and that creates happiness within myself. And so sometimes we have to bite the bullet. Sometimes we have to eat our words. Sometimes you have to look like the idiot in your relationship. And something that I learned from my counselor is I asked myself 3 questions. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? Does it need to be said right now by me? And those 3 questions I ask myself every time we're in a argument or something like that, where, yes, of course, we all want to get the last word out, right? We all want to prove our point. But sometimes it's that silence that is needed for women sometimes to say, okay, I'm going to rest in this silence. I'm going to rest in this and allow that man to find that answer for himself. And that's something that I had to learn. And does it piss me off sometimes? Yeah, I have to eat my own words. I have to eat my silence sometimes. And it's frustrating because my nature says fight. My nature says go. My nature says get the last word out. And sometimes I think once we start implementing more discipline in the conversation, it's not about our happiness, because through our discipline, we will we will have happiness and fulfill our duty on this planet. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Hey, Rebecca, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, when you say, that frustrates you because your nature says to do opposite, is that really your nature, or is that maybe your socialization, training, upbringing? Maybe that's your affinity for, not affinity. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe that's your former association with feminism, right?
Correct.
Like, is it really that's your nature? Because in this space, and I don't know if you're familiar with this space, but there are conversations that are often had about female nature. And when you hear about female nature, it's really talking about the core of a female that they can't get away from, whether they're in United States or Budapest. And so I'm assuming, I just want to clarify for the audience, maybe you're saying your nature, you're referring to what you've been trained and taught and believed.
Or conditioning.
Conditioning, that's what it was.
Right?
But I will also say too, specifically in the Bible, it says submit to each other, right? So God is basically saying we have to submit ourselves to one another. So if God is saying that requires work, that requires discipline, that requires death to myself every single day, then I would say that, yes, as a woman, my role is to be submissive, but sometimes that is not like, yes, that's conditioning, that's how we were brought up, that's everything around us, right? That's our nature around us, that's our environment around us. So the fact that God had to say, submit to one another, meaning that, it is a difficult thing for humans to do that because we're selfish by nature. I think men and women are selfish by nature. If you think about it, we think about ourselves before we think about anyone else. And relationships and marriage, specifically marriage, is death to yourself every single day. It's choosing to love that person 110% every day.
Don't cry, Rebecca.
Everyone says that I sound like I'm crying, but I'm very emotional person.
She's pregnant. Let her cry.
No. But here's the other thing, because you actually kind of segue when you talk about submission, and the thing of it is, I believe, God over man, man over woman, woman over children, right? And so
Yes.
Some of what you were saying earlier, as we talk about the duty in this particular segment here, a woman's duty, would you say, because I listened to your story and one of my guys just literally texted me like, yo, you were literally surprised, like your face, because of what you were saying. My facial, I was like, yo, I'm surprised, right? At what you were saying. Would you say that a woman's duty is to be covered by a man?
Yes.
Why is it so hard for women to understand that they need covering?
There's a lot of reasons, because society has told us that we don't need that. Society has also, how do I position this? Over time, I think men and women have lost their way in the sense of what is it to be a man and what is it to be a woman? And once I can point to secularization of society. I can point to a lot of things of why this is the case. But at the root of it, I think it's fear, right? I think it's a fear of, in my particular case, I grew up with both my parents. There was infidelity in my household. Okay, so my parents stayed together until my dad's passing of this year. But there was a fear that was ingrained in me from a very young age. If I trust this man, he might leave me.